The alarm systems across the Zephrani Imperial Science Station screamed into the darkness of space. Scientists rushed from their sleep chambers, stumbling toward their monitoring stations with growing panic in their eyes. Something impossible was happening in Sector 7719, a quiet region of the galaxy that contained nothing of interest except a small yellow star with a handful of unremarkable planets. Chief Scientist Velcor stood before the main display screen, his three eyes widening as the numbers continued to climb. The energy signature coming from that distant system was beyond anything in their databases. It pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost alive, and the power readings made no sense at all. According to their instruments, something in that system was generating more energy than a small star, but doing it in a way that violated everything they knew about physics. "Run the diagnostics again," Velcor ordered, his voice shaking slightly. "This must be an error." The junior technician, a young Zephrani named Talus, worked frantically at her console. Her fingers moved across the holographic controls with practiced speed. After several long minutes, she looked up at Velcor with fear in her eyes. "No error, Chief Scientist." "The readings are accurate. Something in the Sol system has activated." She paused, checking her data again. "According to our historical archives, that system contains a species called humans. They achieved basic spaceflight only recently. They shouldn't have technology capable of this." Velcor felt his blood turn cold. He had studied the ancient texts during his training, the forbidden knowledge that only the highest levels of imperial science were permitted to access. There were legends, old stories that most dismissed as myth, about artifacts left behind by the progenitors. These were the ancient beings who had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life billions of years ago, then vanished without explanation. The legends spoke of testing devices, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the right species to find them. But these were just stories told to young students, meant to inspire wonder and curiosity. They were not supposed to be real. "Send an emergency transmission to the Imperial Palace," Velcor said quietly. "Mark it highest priority. Emperor Kethraz must know about this immediately." The message traveled across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, carried through the Empire's vast communication network. Within hours, it reached the golden towers of the Imperial Palace on Zephranius Prime, the heart of an empire that stretched across 3,000 star systems and ruled over 47 different species. Emperor Kethraz sat on his throne of crystallized starlight when the message arrived. He was old by Zephrani standards, having ruled for over 2 centuries. His scales had turned from bright blue to a deep purple with age, and his eyes held the weight of countless decisions that had shaped the galaxy. When he read the report from the science station, his expression changed from curiosity to grave concern. He immediately summoned the Imperial Council, an emergency gathering of the most powerful beings in the Empire. Military commanders, chief scientists, diplomatic advisors, and intelligence officers all arrived within the hour, filling the great council chamber with their presence. "We have a situation," Emperor Kethraz began, his voice carrying across the chamber with natural authority. "Something has activated in a primitive system on the outer rim. The power signature matches descriptions from the ancient texts. It appears to be a progenitor artifact." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several members stood from their seats while others leaned forward with intense interest. General Krathos, the supreme military commander, slammed his armored fist on the table. "If this is truly a progenitor device, we cannot allow it to fall into the wrong hands," Krathos declared. "Such power could destabilize the entire galactic order. We must secure it immediately." Ambassador Sharonal, a delicate being from the Whisper species, raised one graceful hand. "What do we know about this human species? Surely they cannot have activated such a device intentionally. They must not even understand what they have found." Chief Scientist Velcor, who had been summoned to the palace for the meeting, stepped forward. He projected a holographic display showing everything they knew about humanity. The images showed a blue and green planet, teeming with life. Cities covered the surface, connected by primitive transport systems. Satellites orbited above, and a small space station circled the planet. "The humans are a young species," Velcor explained. "They have only existed in their current form for approximately 200,000 years. They achieved industrial technology mere centuries ago, and reached space only decades past. They are divided into numerous competing nations, constantly engaged in conflicts and disagreements. By all measures, they should not be capable of advanced technology." Emperor Kethraz studied the images carefully. The humans looked fragile, with soft skin and no natural armor or weapons. They appeared to have only 2 eyes, which seemed limiting. Their technology was crude compared to even the least advanced species in the Empire. And yet they have activated something we cannot, the Emperor said slowly. What does that tell us? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Intelligence Director Quaven, a shadowy figure who preferred to remain in the background, finally spoke up. His voice was soft but carried a dangerous edge. It tells us that either the device responds to something other than technological advancement, or the humans have hidden capabilities we do not understand. Either possibility is deeply concerning. Emperor Kethraz nodded slowly. He had ruled long enough to know that the greatest threats often came from unexpected directions. An enemy you understood could be predicted and controlled. An unknown was far more dangerous. We will send a reconnaissance fleet, the Emperor decided. A small force enough to observe and gather information, but not so large as to be threatening. General Krathos, select your best stealth ships and most experienced commanders. I want eyes on that system within the week. And if the humans resist our investigation? General Krathos asked. Then we will know they understand what they possess, Emperor Kethraz replied. And we will respond accordingly. But for now, we observe. I want to know everything about these humans before we make our next move. The fleet departed 3 days later. 5 stealth ships equipped with the best sensor technology the Empire possessed made the jump to faster-than-light travel and headed toward the Sol system. Commander Drevak led the mission, a veteran officer who had served the Empire for over a century. He had fought in the border wars and negotiated with hostile species. He considered himself prepared for anything. He was wrong. As the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, their sensors immediately locked onto the source of the energy signature. It hung in space between the 3rd and 4th planets, a massive structure that had not existed in any previous surveys of the system. The construct was enormous, easily 10 kilometers across, composed of materials that their scanners could not properly identify. It seemed to shift and change as they observed it, as though it existed partially in multiple dimensions at once. By the ancients, Commander Drevak whispered, "It is real." The structure pulsed with energy, waves of power that rippled through space-time itself. Around it, crude human vessels moved cautiously, small craft that looked like toys compared to the artifact. The humans were clearly investigating it, sending sensor probes and observation teams. "They are treating it like a discovery," Commander Drevak's sensor officer reported. From their communications, it appears this structure appeared in their system only 2 weeks ago. "They do not know what it is, but they are attempting to study it." Commander Drevak watched as a small human shuttle approached the artifact. He expected the structure to remain inert, to reject the primitive vessel. Instead, something remarkable happened. As the human shuttle drew near, the artifact seemed to respond. Lights flickered across its surface, patterns that had been dormant suddenly coming to life. The energy signature spiked dramatically. "It is reacting to them," the sensor officer said, disbelief clear in his voice. "The artifact is responding to human presence." Commander Drevak felt a chill run through his body. This was worse than they had feared. The humans had not just found the artifact by accident. Somehow, impossibly, they were compatible with it. The device recognized them. He immediately sent an emergency transmission back to the Empire. The message was simple but terrifying. The humans can activate it. Recommend immediate intervention. The response from Emperor Kethraz came within hours. The orders were clear. The reconnaissance mission was over. A full diplomatic envoy would arrive within days, backed by a military fleet. The Empire would make contact with humanity and secure the artifact, whatever the cost. Commander Drevak positioned his ships to maintain observation while they waited for reinforcements. He watched as the humans continued their investigations, completely unaware that they had attracted the attention of the greatest empire in the galaxy. They moved around their discovery with a mixture of caution and excitement, like children who had found something wonderful but dangerous. In a way, that was exactly what they were, and Commander Drevak could not shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. The artifact had waited for billions of years, silent and dormant, hidden from every advanced species that had ever searched for progenitor technology, and then humanity had arrived, young and primitive and ignorant, and the artifact had awakened for them. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the International Space Station, staring at the structure that had appeared in their solar system without warning. She was the head of the emergency scientific team assembled to study this impossible object. Every nation on Earth had put aside their differences, at least temporarily, to face this mystery together. "What are you?" she whispered to the distant artifact, pressing her hand against the cold window. The structure gleamed in the sunlight, beautiful and terrifying at once. She did not know that her question was being asked across the galaxy, by beings far more advanced than humanity. She did not know that fleets were already moving, that empires were making plans, that the fate of her entire species now hung in the balance. All she knew was that something had changed. The universe had reached out and touched humanity, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the darkness beyond Earth's atmosphere, the artifact continued to pulse with ancient power, waiting for the humans to take the next step, waiting for them to claim their inheritance, whether they were ready for it or not. The Zephreni diplomatic fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a display meant to impress and intimidate. 20 massive ships materialized in formation, their hulls gleaming with advanced metals that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built, bristling with weapons and technology that represented thousands of years of advancement. Ambassador Kelthron stood on the bridge of the flagship, adjusting his ceremonial robes. He had conducted first contact with 17 different species during his long career, and the process was always the same. The primitive species would be awed by the Empire's power, grateful for the attention of a superior civilization, and eager to cooperate in exchange for technology and protection. He expected the humans to fall to their knees in wonder. He was about to learn his first lesson about humanity. They rarely did what anyone expected. On Earth, alarms rang out across every military installation and space monitoring station. Satellites tracked the appearance of the alien fleet, and within minutes images were being broadcast across the planet. Humanity had known they were not alone in the universe for only 16 days since the artifact had appeared. Now they were facing a fleet of alien warships, and panic spread like wildfire. The Earth Coalition, a hastily assembled united government formed to deal with the artifact crisis, scrambled to respond. President Maria Santos of the Coalition stood in the Emergency Command Center, surrounded by military advisors and scientists, all shouting different recommendations. "We need to show them we are not a threat," one advisor urged. "We should prepare our defenses," a general countered. "We should try to communicate," Dr. Sarah Chen suggested. "Maybe they are here to help." President Santos raised her hand, demanding silence. She was a small woman with iron will, someone who had risen to power through intelligence and determination rather than force. She had never imagined she would be making first contact with an alien species, but she refused to show fear. "Open all communication channels," she ordered. "Let them know we want to talk." The Zephrani received the human transmissions within seconds. Ambassador Kelthron listened to the crude radio signals, the simple digital messages, the desperate attempts to establish communication. He smiled to himself. They were as primitive as the reports suggested. "Transmit the standard greeting," he ordered. "Make it clear who we are and what we require." The message that reached Earth was translated through Zephrani computers, converted into multiple human languages. It appeared on screens across the planet, broadcast through every available channel. "We are the Zephrani Empire, rulers of 3,000 star systems and protectors of galactic peace. We have come to your system regarding the artifact you have discovered. This device is an ancient weapon of terrible power, left behind by a civilization that destroyed itself through misuse of such technology. For the safety of your species and the galaxy, you must surrender control of the artifact to us immediately. We will ensure it is properly secured and contained. You will be compensated with technology and resources, and welcomed as a protectorate species under Imperial protection. You have 24 of your hours to comply." President Santos read the message 3 times, feeling anger rise in her chest with each reading. Around her, the command center erupted in outraged voices. The aliens were not offering help or friendship. They were making demands, treating humanity like children who had found something dangerous and needed adults to take it away. "They think we are stupid," General Marcus Webb, the Coalition's military commander, growled. "They think they can just show up and take what they want." Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the alien ships on the display screens. "We need to be careful. We know nothing about their capabilities. Those ships could destroy our entire planet if they wanted to. Maybe, President Santos said slowly, but they did not open with threats of violence. They offered compensation. That means they want something from us which gives us leverage. She turned to her communications officer. Send them a response. Be polite but firm. The message that went back to the Zafrani fleet was simple. We appreciate your concern, but we must decline your offer. The artifact appeared in our system and we have as much right to study it as anyone. We are willing to share information and cooperate, but we will not simply hand over something we do not yet understand. We propose a joint research effort where both our species can learn together. Ambassador Kelthrin read the human response with growing disbelief. In 17 previous first contacts, no species had ever refused the Empire. They were always too frightened or too awed to resist. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. They dare to refuse us? One of his officers said, voice full of shock. Ambassador Kelthrin felt his patience wearing thin. He had been chosen for this mission because of his diplomatic skills, but he was also a proud member of the Empire. To be refused by such primitives was an insult that burned. Send another message, he ordered. Make our position clearer. The second message was less friendly. It detailed the Empire's military power, described what happened to species who defied imperial will, and made it clear that refusal was not truly an option. The tone was that of a parent scolding a stubborn child, full of condescension and thinly veiled threats. On Earth, the reaction was furious. The people of Earth, who had only just united in the face of the unknown, now found themselves united by anger. Who were these aliens to threaten them? Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout history, survived wars and disasters and their own worst impulses. They would not bow to threats now. President Santos made a decision that would change everything. We are not children to be ordered around. Send them our final response, no. The artifact stays with us. If they want war, we will give them war. General Webb looked at her with respect and concern. Madam President, we cannot win a military conflict with them. Their technology is far beyond ours. Maybe, Santos replied, but we have something they want and we are standing between them and it. Sometimes the only way to get respect is to show you will not be pushed around. Prepare our defenses. If they attack, we fight. The final human message reached the Zafrani fleet, and Ambassador Kelthron finally lost his patience completely. These primitives needed to learn their place. He contacted General Krathos, who commanded the military escort ships. The humans refuse to see reason, Kelthron said. I am authorizing a show of force. Disable their defensive satellites and space stations. Make it clear what happens when they defy the Empire. But do not harm their planet. We want them intact to serve as workers once we secure the artifact. General Krathos smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Finally, my ships are ready. 6 Zafrani warships broke formation and accelerated toward Earth. Their weapons powered up, targeting systems locking onto human satellites and the International Space Station. It was meant to be a simple operation, a demonstration that would break human resistance in minutes. But they had forgotten about the artifact. Dr. Sarah Chen was aboard the research vessel Endeavour, one of several human ships studying the artifact at close range. She watched in horror as the alien warships approached Earth, their weapons charging. Without thinking, acting on pure instinct, she pressed her hand against the viewing port and whispered, "Please, help us," the artifact responded. Energy surged through the massive structure, patterns of light exploding across its surface in ways that had never happened before. The artifact had been mostly dormant since its appearance, responding only with small activations when humans approached. Now it came fully alive, awakening to the threat against those it had chosen. The 6 Zafrani warships never reached Earth. Beams of energy, the color of lightning and starlight mixed together, lanced out from the artifact with impossible speed. The beams did not burn through the alien ships or explode them. Instead, they seemed to simply unmake them, erasing the vessels from reality as though they had never existed. One moment there were 6 warships approaching Earth. The next moment there was only empty space and scattered atoms. On the Zafrani flagship, every alarm system screamed at once. Ambassador Kelthron stood frozen, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. 6 of the Empire's most advanced warships, vessels that could destroy planets, had been eliminated in seconds. The power required for such an attack was beyond anything in Imperial capability. "Retreat!" General Krathos roared. "All ships, emergency jump! Get us out of this system now!" The remaining Zephrani ships scrambled to escape, their engines screaming as they prepared for faster-than-light travel. The artifact did not pursue them. It had eliminated the immediate threat and now fell silent again, its surface gradually dimming back to its normal state. But the damage was done. The Zephrani fleet jumped away, carrying news that would shake the galaxy. Humanity had wielded the artifact as a weapon, and it was more powerful than anyone had imagined. On Earth, humanity watched in stunned silence as their would-be conquerors fled. The artifact had defended them, had recognized them as worthy of protection. Dr. Chen stared at the structure with new understanding and new fear. They had not activated it through technology or knowledge. It had responded to her emotions, to her desperate plea for help. President Santos stood in the command center, surrounded by celebrating staff members, but she did not feel victorious. She understood what had just happened. They had made an enemy of a galactic empire, and they had done it using a weapon they did not understand and could not control. "Get me Dr. Chen," she ordered. "We need to understand what we are dealing with before they come back. Because they will come back, and next time they will not come to talk." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Zephrani Empire, in humiliation and rage, sent emergency broadcasts to all member species and allied empires. The message was clear and terrifying. A primitive species had acquired progenitor technology and used it to destroy Imperial ships. They were a threat to everyone. In the Council of 12, the gathering of the galaxy's most powerful empires, emergency sessions were convened. Species that had been enemies for centuries now found common ground in their fear of humanity. The Krithak Horde, the Selenian Federation, the Hive Mind Collective, all put aside their differences to discuss one question: what should be done about Earth? Some argued for immediate military action, a combined fleet that would overwhelm humanity before they learned to fully use the artifact. Others suggested containment, sealing off the Sol system completely and waiting for humanity to destroy itself. A few, very few, suggested trying to understand why the progenitors had chosen humanity, but these voices were drowned out by fear and anger. On Earth, humanity began to prepare for the worst. Military forces mobilized, scientists worked frantically to understand the artifact, and people across the planet looked to the stars with new awareness. They were no longer alone in the universe, and their new neighbors saw them as a threat. Dr. Chen returned to studying the artifact with desperate urgency. She knew the key to survival lay in understanding this ancient device, but every test they ran, every probe they sent, revealed only more mysteries. The artifact seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Its materials were unlike anything in human knowledge, and its purpose remained unclear. But one thing was certain: it had chosen to protect humanity. The question that kept Chen awake at night was simple and terrifying. Why? What did this ancient device see in humanity that made them worth protecting? And would that protection last when the galaxy came calling with overwhelming force? In the darkness of space, the artifact pulsed quietly, its ancient systems processing and calculating. The test had begun. Dr. Sarah Chen had not slept properly in 3 weeks. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed the latest data from the artifact. Her team had started calling it the Crucible, a name that seemed to fit the way it tested them, challenged them, shaped them through fire and pressure. The research station humanity had built near the Crucible was now home to the brightest minds from across Earth. Scientists, engineers, mathematicians, philosophers, and even artists had been brought together to solve a puzzle that might determine whether humanity survived the next year. The station hummed with constant activity, people working in shifts around the clock, driven by desperation and wonder in equal measure. Chen stood before the main display wall, which showed thousands of scans and measurements taken from the Crucible. Every test they ran revealed new layers of complexity. The structure seemed to operate on principles that human physics could not quite explain, dancing at the edges of their understanding like a word on the tip of the tongue. "Still nothing?" Dr. James Morrison asked, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. He was a quantum physicist who had been studying the way the Crucible seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states at once. Chen accepted the coffee gratefully. "Not nothing, too much. Every answer leads to 10 new questions." She gestured at the display. Look at this. When we send probes to scan the surface, the readings change based on who is piloting the probe. Not just human versus machine control, but different humans get different results. It is like the crucible is responding to something inside us, something individual. Morrison nodded slowly. The neural scan data supports that. Remember when it activated during the Zafrani attack? Your brain activity spiked in very specific patterns. I have been comparing those patterns to other moments when the crucible has responded, and there is a connection. What kind of connection? Emotional resonance, but not simple emotions. It is more complex. The crucible seems to respond to combinations of thoughts and feelings that create specific neural patterns. Determination mixed with creativity, fear combined with hope, logic balanced with intuition. It is like it is looking for something specific in how we think. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. You are saying it is testing our minds? Our psychology? I think it has been testing us since the moment it appeared, Morrison replied quietly. Think about it, Sarah. An object of immense power appears in our solar system, giving us just enough time to notice it before the Zafrani arrived. When they threatened us, the crucible activated at precisely the right moment. Not before, when it might have made us confident and reckless. Not after, when it would have been too late. It defended us but did not make it easy. We still had to act to show determination. Chen turned this over in her mind. If Morrison was right, then the crucible was not just a weapon or a tool. It was something far more significant and far more dangerous. We need to go deeper. I want to try a direct neural interface. Morrison's eyes widened. Sarah, that is incredibly dangerous. We have no idea what a direct connection might do to a human mind. We have no choice, Chen said firmly. The intelligence reports say that half the galaxy is forming an alliance against us. They are calling themselves the Galactic Concordant, and they are gathering a fleet that will make the Zafrani task force look like children playing with toys. We have maybe 2 months before they arrive, and when they do, we need to understand what we are dealing with. I am the head of this project. I will take the risk. The direct neural interface experiment was prepared over the following week. A device was constructed that would allow Chen's brain to connect directly with the crucible's systems, using principles adapted from the artifact's own technology. The theory was sound, but theory and practice were often very different things when dealing with progenitor technology. President Santos visited the research station the day before the experiment. She found Chen in her quarters reviewing her notes one final time. You do not have to do this, Santos said without preamble. We can find another way. Chen looked up, managing a tired smile. What other way? We have thrown everything we have at understanding the crucible, and we are still barely scratching the surface. This is our best chance, maybe our only chance, to learn what we need to know. Santos sat down across from her. I am sending you into unknown danger. As president, I should not allow it. As a human being, I hate it. But as the person responsible for our species' survival, I need you to succeed. No pressure, then, Chen said with dark humor. There is something else you should know, Santos continued. We have been monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The Concordant is not just preparing to quarantine us. Many of their species are terrified of us, truly terrified. They see humanity as an existential threat. If you succeed in understanding the crucible, we may gain the power to defend ourselves, but we will also confirm their worst fears. Chen nodded slowly. And if I fail, I might die, and we will still be helpless when they arrive. Yes, then I better not fail. The experiment began the next day. Chen was strapped into a chair surrounded by monitoring equipment, dozens of sensors attached to her head and body. The neural interface device was a crown of crystalline material grown from samples of the crucible itself. It would create a bridge between her brain and the artifact systems, allowing direct communication in ways that transcended language. We will monitor you constantly, Morrison said, making final adjustments. If anything goes wrong, we will disconnect you immediately. If something goes wrong, it will probably be too fast for you to react, Chen replied. But I trust you to try. She closed her eyes as the interface activated. For a moment, there was nothing. Then everything exploded into sensation. Chen found herself standing in a space that was not space, surrounded by information that was not quite visual, but filled her perception completely. She could see the crucible's systems, feel them, understand them in ways that bypassed normal comprehension. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Then the voice came, not words but meaning transmitted directly into her consciousness. Welcome, child of the inheritors. Chen's awareness focused, trying to find the source of the communication. Who are you? What are you? I am the crucible. I am the final test. I am the key to what comes next. The meaning shifted, concepts flowing faster than language could capture. You ask the wrong questions. Ask instead, what are you? Why do you qualify? What makes humanity worthy of the inheritance? I do not understand, Chen thought back. Worthy of what? The space around her changed. She saw visions of ancient times, a galaxy young and full of potential. She saw the progenitors, beings of pure energy and thought who had seeded worlds with life and watched civilizations rise and fall. They had built wonders beyond imagination, but had faced a problem that all their power could not solve. Stagnation, the crucible communicated. Perfection achieved too easily. Advancement without challenge. We became powerful but lost the capacity for true growth. So we created a test, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for a species that could inherit what we had learned without making our mistakes. Chen watched as the vision showed the crucible and others like it, placed throughout the galaxy, waiting for millions of years. Species after species had found them, but none had succeeded in activation. They were too uniform in thought, too rigid in psychology, too perfect in their own ways. What makes humans different? Chen asked. The crucible showed her humanity's history. Wars and peace. Art and science. Cruelty and compassion. It showed humans who were completely different from each other, who disagreed and argued and fought, but who also cooperated and created and dreamed together. It showed a species that was messy and contradictory and chaotic in ways that made no logical sense. Chaos with purpose, the crucible explained. Contradiction that creates strength. You are individuals who compete, but you are also a collective that cooperates. You are logical but also emotional. You seek order but thrive in disorder. You are exactly what was needed. A species complex enough to handle power without being corrupted by it. Chen felt understanding dawn. You are not just testing our technology. You are testing our psychology. Our ability to hold contradictory truths in our minds at the same time. Yes, other species evolved in stable environments, developed unified cultures, achieved perfection in specific areas. But perfection is fragile. You humans evolved in chaos, adapted to contradiction, learned to be flexible in ways that seem inefficient but are actually strength. You can be individuals and collective, warriors and pacifists, logical and emotional, all at once without breaking. But we have broken, Chen protested. We have had wars, genocides, terrible things throughout our history. And you remember them, learn from them, carry the weight of your mistakes. That too is part of what makes you qualified. You have the capacity for self-reflection, for growth through failure. The progenitors lost that capacity. We became so powerful that we forgot how to change, how to adapt, how to remain dynamic. You have not forgotten because you have never stopped needing those abilities. Chen's mind reeled with the implications. So the crucible is what? A weapon? No, a key. The vision shifted again, showing a network of installations across the galaxy, ancient technology left behind by the progenitors. The inheritance includes weapons, yes, but also so much more. Technology to heal worlds dying from ecological collapse. Engines that can reverse entropy on stellar scales. Medical knowledge to cure any disease. Faster-than-light travel and communication that requires no infrastructure. Clean energy sources beyond your imagination. All the tools needed to guide a galaxy toward a better future. Why would you give us such power? We are still young, still learning. We make mistakes, exactly. You still make mistakes, which means you still learn. You are still chaotic, which means you can still adapt. You are still contradictory, which means you can still grow. The progenitors chose to give this inheritance to a species still in the process of becoming, not one that had already reached its final form. Evolution is not a destination. It is a process. You understand this in ways species that achieved early perfection never can. Chen felt tears running down her face in the real world, though she was barely aware of her physical body. But the galaxy is coming to destroy us. They fear what we might become. They fear what they cannot understand. Their fear is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to prove them wrong, to show that power given to the chaotic can create harmony, not destruction. to demonstrate that humanity's contradictions are features, not flaws. That is the real test, not whether you can activate me, but whether you can use what I offer wisely. How do we do that? By being exactly what you are. Messy, contradictory, chaotic, but also compassionate, cooperative, creative. You have already begun. Your species has united in the face of external threat, putting aside differences to face a common challenge. That is the first step. The next steps will be harder. Can you help us? Can you give us the power to defend against the Concordant fleet? I can give you access to the inheritance, but you must choose how to use it. Every capability I unlock will test you further. Power used wrongly will seal the inheritance away again. Power used wisely will unlock more. The progenitors designed this system to be self-correcting. Species that abuse the inheritance lose access to it. Species that prove worthy gain more. That is a massive risk. We could lose everything at any moment. Yes, that is the point. Power without accountability corrupts. Power that can be lost if misused remains a tool rather than becoming a master. The inheritance is not a gift given freely. It is a responsibility that must be earned continuously. Chen understood now. The Crucible was not just a device but a teaching system, designed to guide a species from where they were to where they needed to be. It would give them power, but only as much as they could handle responsibly. It would test them constantly, not to punish but to ensure they remained worthy. I understand, Chen thought. What do I need to do? Return to your people. Share what you have learned. Then we will begin the real work. The Concordant is coming. You will need to defend yourselves. But how you defend yourselves will determine everything that follows. Choose wisely, child of the inheritors. The galaxy is watching and your choices will echo through the ages. The connection broke. Chen gasped, her consciousness slamming back into her physical body with shocking force. She opened her eyes to find Morrison and a dozen others leaning over her with concern. Sarah, can you hear me? What happened? You have been under for 6 hours. 6 hours. It had felt like minutes. Chen sat up slowly, her head spinning, but despite the disorientation, she felt clarity like she had never known before. She understood what they faced and what they needed to do. Call President Santos, she said hoarsely, and gather the senior research team. I know what the Crucible is and I know what is coming. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. As the team scrambled to follow her instructions, Chen looked out the viewport at the Crucible floating in space. It pulsed gently as if acknowledging her understanding. Humanity had passed the first test by being chosen. They had passed the second test by defending themselves without being destroyed by their own weapon. Now came the hardest test of all, proving they could wield godlike power without becoming monsters. The Concordant fleet was coming, bringing the combined might of half the galaxy, and humanity would have to face them not with overwhelming force but with wisdom, showing the galaxy that the chaos they feared was actually the key to a better future. Chen smiled grimly. No pressure at all. The Concordant fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, in a display of power that would have made ancient gods weep with envy. 3,000 warships from 12 different empires filled the void of space, their combined presence creating distortions in local space-time. The fleet represented civilizations that had existed for millennia, technology refined through countless wars, and a determination born from fear. Emperor Kethraz of the Zephrani Empire stood on the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Glory, surrounded by the military leaders of the Concordant. They were a diverse group, representing species that had rarely agreed on anything throughout galactic history. But fear of humanity and the Crucible had accomplished what diplomacy never could. Today we end the human threat, Emperor Kethraz announced, his voice carrying across communication channels to every ship in the fleet. Today we show the galaxy that no primitive species can challenge the established order. Today we save civilization itself from those who would wield power they cannot comprehend. General Krathos stepped forward, tactical displays showing the Sol system in detail. Earth hung in space, blue and green and fragile, surrounded by human defensive installations that looked pathetic compared to the Concordant armada. The Crucible floated between Earth and Mars, pulsing with energy that made even the advanced sensors of the fleet struggle to get accurate readings. Our strategy is simple, General Krathos explained. We do not need to destroy Earth or the humans. We need only to contain them. We will establish a barrier around the entire Sol system, a dimensional wall that nothing can pass through. The humans will be trapped inside, unable to threaten the galaxy, and the crucible will be neutralized. Can we be certain the barrier will hold? Asked Commander Threx of the Krythak Horde, a massive being whose species had evolved from predators that hunted in packs. The crucible has already demonstrated power beyond our understanding. The barrier technology is based on progenitor principles we have studied for centuries, replied Chief Scientist Velcor. It requires the combined output of the entire fleet to establish, but once in place, it will be impenetrable. Nothing short of reality-bending power could break through. Then let us begin, Emperor Kethraz commanded. Send the ultimatum to Earth. On Earth, President Santos stood in the Emergency Command Center, surrounded by military and scientific advisors. The arrival of the Concordant fleet had been expected, but seeing the actual scale of it was still overwhelming. Humanity had united in ways that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Nations that had been enemies now worked together seamlessly. Resources flowed freely across borders. People who had never agreed on anything had found common purpose in survival. But unity and determination could not change the basic mathematics of the situation. Humanity had dozens of warships, built hastily using principles they were still learning from the Crucible. The Concordant had thousands refined through millennia of warfare. It was not a fair fight, and everyone knew it. The ultimatum arrived, broadcast across all frequencies. Emperor Kethraz's face appeared on screens across Earth, his expression a mixture of superiority and something that might have been pity. Humans of Earth, you have been judged a threat to galactic stability. Your possession of progenitor technology without proper understanding makes you dangerous to yourselves and others. We do not wish to destroy you. We offer you a chance to survive. Evacuate your planet. We will transport you to designated worlds where you will be provided for and monitored. In exchange, we will seal your system, containing the Crucible where it can harm no one. You have 6 of your hours to begin evacuation. If you refuse, we will establish the barrier by force, and any humans remaining in the system will be trapped forever. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. In the command center, silence reigned for several long seconds. Then General Marcus Webb, now Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, laughed. It was not a happy sound. They are still treating us like children, Webb said, offering us safety if we just abandon our home and submit to their authority. They have not learned anything. President Santos nodded slowly. Dr. Chen, what can the Crucible do for us? Dr. Sarah Chen stood at a specialized console linked directly to the Crucible through the neural interface systems they had developed. Over the past weeks, she had spent hours connected to the ancient device, learning its capabilities and limitations. The understanding had come with a price. She had lost weight. Her hair had started going gray despite her young age, and sometimes she had trouble remembering which thoughts were hers and which came from the Crucible. But she understood. Oh, how she understood. The Crucible will not give us an easy victory, Chen explained. It continues to test us. It has unlocked defensive systems, allowing us to shield Earth and our installations. It has provided us with weapons that can challenge the Concordant fleet, but it responds to how we use those tools. Every choice we make, every action we take, determines what capabilities it will grant us next. Then what do you recommend? Santos asked. Chen took a deep breath. We defend ourselves. We show the galaxy that we will not be bullied or contained, but we do it in a way that proves we deserve the Crucible's power. We do not seek to destroy the Concordant fleet. We seek to make them understand that they are wrong about us. And how exactly do we do that while they are trying to seal us away forever? Webb demanded. We give them exactly what they fear, Chen said with a grim smile. We show them what humanity can do with progenitor technology, but we show them we can do it responsibly. The Earth Coalition sent their response to Emperor Kethraz. It was simple and direct. No. The Concordant fleet began the process of establishing the dimensional barrier. Ships moved into position around the Sol system, forming a sphere of vessels millions of kilometers in radius. Each ship began channeling energy into massive generator arrays, creating the framework for a wall that would exist partially outside normal spacetime. The barrier started to form, shimmering fields of energy connecting ship to ship, slowly enclosing the system. It would take hours to complete, but once finished, nothing would be able to pass through. The Sol system would become a prison, locked away from the rest of the galaxy forever. Humanity did not wait passively. Chen had worked with Earth scientists and military planners to develop a defense strategy that used the Crucible's capabilities in ways that would continue the test. They needed to prove they could use power without becoming monsters. They needed to show strength without cruelty. The human fleet, small but equipped with Crucible-enhanced technology, launched from Earth orbit. 50 ships, each crewed by volunteers who knew they were facing impossible odds. They spread out, moving to intercept different sections of the concordant fleet. "This is suicide," Commander Threx observed from his position in the concordant command structure. "They cannot possibly think those few ships can stop us." "They are desperate," General Krathos replied. "Let them come. It will be over quickly." But the human ships did not attack. Instead, they began broadcasting. Not threats or demands, but information. Dr. Chen's voice, translated into every major galactic language, filled the communication channels. "We know you fear us," Chen said. "We know you believe we are dangerous, that we will misuse the power of the Crucible. We understand your fear because we share it. We are afraid of what we might become. But fear should not be answered with imprisonment. It should be answered with understanding." The human ships released data packets, compressed information streams containing everything humanity had learned about the Crucible. They showed the tests, the limitations, the way the device would only grant power to those who used it responsibly. They demonstrated the self-correcting nature of the progenitor inheritance. "The Crucible chose us," Chen continued, "not because we are perfect, but because we are not. We are chaotic and contradictory. We make mistakes. But we also learn from those mistakes. We grow. The progenitors left this inheritance for a species that could wield power without being corrupted by it. They believed that species needed to be still in the process of becoming, not finished with evolution. They believed that contradiction and chaos, when balanced with compassion and wisdom, create strength. In the concordant fleet, reactions were mixed. Some commanders dismissed the human broadcasts as propaganda, but others listened. They studied the data, analyzing the technical information about the Crucible's self-limiting systems. Scientists began to see what Chen was explaining. The inheritance could not be abused without being lost. Commander Sharonal of the Verdani, a species known for philosophical thinking, contacted her government directly. "This changes everything. If what the humans say is true, they cannot misuse the Crucible even if they wanted to. The system prevents it. We may be making a terrible mistake." But Emperor Kethraz was unmoved. "Propaganda and lies. They will say anything to avoid containment. Ignore their broadcasts and complete the barrier." The concordant fleet continued their work. The dimensional barrier grew stronger, the wall rising around the Sol system like a cage being built around a dangerous animal. Humanity had perhaps 1 hour before the barrier was complete, and they would be sealed away forever. That was when the Crucible truly awakened. Chen felt it through her neural link, a surge of energy that made her gasp. The ancient device was responding not to her commands, but to humanity's choices. They had chosen to defend themselves without seeking to destroy their enemies. They had chosen to share information rather than hide it. They had chosen to appeal to understanding rather than escalate to violence. The Crucible approved. Energy poured from the ancient structure, not as weapons, but as a demonstration. It showed its true form for the first time since appearing in the Sol system. The 10-kilometer construct that the concordant fleet could see was just a fraction of the whole. The Crucible existed partially in multiple dimensions, and now it revealed the full scope of its existence. A web of light spread across space, connecting not just to the immediate area but to hundreds of other locations across the galaxy. Every progenitor installation, every piece of the inheritance lit up simultaneously. The network became visible to anyone with sensors advanced enough to detect it. "By the ancients," Velcor whispered, staring at the readings flooding his screens. "It is not just one artifact. It is an entire system, spread across the galaxy, and the humans have activated all of it." The concordant fleet hesitated. The dimensional barrier was nearly complete, but now they faced a question no one had considered. If they sealed away the Sol system, would they cut themselves off from the entire progenitor network? The inheritance spread across the galaxy might become inaccessible, locked behind the same walls meant to contain humanity. Young pilot Marcus Webb, commander of the human ship Defiance, saw an opening. He had studied the concordant formation, looking for weaknesses in their strategy. Now he saw it. The barrier required all 3,000 ships maintaining perfect synchronization. Break that synchronization, and the whole thing would collapse. He did not attack the ships themselves. Instead, he used a capability the Crucible had recently unlocked, something that Chen had called harmonic disruption. It was not a weapon, but a tool, designed to interfere with coordinated energy systems without causing physical damage. The Defiance and the other human ships broadcast harmonic pulses, tuned specifically to the frequencies the Concordant fleet was using to maintain the barrier. It was like playing a discordant note in a perfect symphony. The barrier flickered, sections becoming unstable. "Compensate!" General Kratos roared. "Do not let them break our formation." But the damage was done. The dimensional barrier, which required perfect coordination to establish, began to collapse. Sections failed, creating gaps in the coverage. The Concordant fleet scrambled to restore it, but the human ships continued their disruption, always staying one step ahead. "Enough," Emperor Kethras commanded. "Destroy those ships. If they will not accept containment, we will eliminate the threat directly." A portion of the Concordant fleet broke formation, weapon systems powering up. Hundreds of warships turned their attention to the 50 human vessels, preparing to eliminate them once and for all. It should have been an execution, a brief and one-sided battle. Instead, the Crucible revealed another capability. Defensive fields blossomed around the human ships, shields that did not just absorb energy but redirected it, bouncing weapons fire back toward its sources. The Concordant found themselves fighting their own weapons, their own attacks turned against them. But the Crucible's protection came with limits. Chen felt it through her link. The device was providing defense, but it was also demanding something in return. The human pilots needed to prove they deserved this protection. They needed to show they would not use it to become aggressors. Webb understood instinctively. "All ships, defensive formation only. Do not return fire against the Concordant vessels. Shield and evade. Prove we are not the threat they think we are." It went against every military instinct, fighting without fighting back. But the human pilots trusted their commander. They wove through space, shields active, dodging and deflecting, but never attacking. They let the Concordant ships exhaust themselves, firing again and again at targets that refused to be destroyed, but also refused to strike back. On the Concordant flagship, Emperor Kethras watched in growing frustration as his fleet fired thousands of shots without achieving a single human casualty. The humans danced through the assault, protected by technology that should not exist, demonstrating capabilities that terrified and confused in equal measure. Commander Sharonal made her decision. She broadcast on open channels, her voice calm and clear. "Verdani fleet, ceasefire. I will not participate in an unjust attack against those who have done nothing to harm us." Her 50 ships powered down their weapons and withdrew from the fight. It was a small number compared to the total Concordant force, but it broke the unity of purpose that had brought the alliance together. Other commanders began to question, hesitate, wonder if they were truly in the right. The siege of Sol had reached a turning point. The Concordant had the raw power to overwhelm humanity. But humanity had something the empires had forgotten: the ability to prove through actions rather than words, to demonstrate character under pressure, to show that power without wisdom corrupts, but power tempered with restraint transforms. The battle was far from over, but its nature had changed. It was no longer a question of whether humanity could survive. It was a question of whether the galaxy could learn what humanity was trying to teach them. Emperor Kethras stood on the bridge of the eternal glory, watching his carefully constructed alliance fracture before his eyes. The Verdani fleet had withdrawn completely, and others were wavering. Communications channels filled with arguments and debates. Some commanders wanted to continue the attack. Others questioned whether they had made a terrible mistake in judging humanity. But Kethras was not a ruler who accepted defeat easily. He had built an empire through determination and ruthless decision-making. If the alliance was breaking, he would act alone. He would show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the natural order of things. "Bring us the planet killer," he commanded. General Kratos looked at him with shock. "Emperor, that weapon is forbidden by every treaty in the galaxy. Using it would make us criminals in the eyes of every civilized species. The humans have already made us look weak," Kethras snarled. "Better to be feared as criminals than dismissed as failures. Bring the weapon forward." From the center of the Zafrani formation, a massive vessel emerged. It was ancient, a relic from wars fought millennia ago, when entire worlds were destroyed to make political points. The technology was brutal and simple. It would crack Earth's crust, boil its oceans, and render the planet uninhabitable in minutes. Millions would die and humanity would be broken forever. On Earth, alarms screamed across every monitoring station. Dr. Sarah Chen felt the change through her link to the Crucible, a sudden spike of danger that made her heart race. The ancient device was warning her, showing her what was coming. "They are bringing a planet-killer weapon online," she reported to the command center. "They are going to destroy Earth." President Santos felt ice form in her stomach. "Can the Crucible stop it?" "Yes," Chen said slowly. "But there is a price. To stop a weapon of that magnitude, the Crucible would need to release power on a scale we have not yet used. It could destroy the entire Zafrani fleet instantly. But if we do that, if we escalate to that level of violence, we might fail the test. The Crucible might seal itself away, determining that we are not ready for the inheritance after all." The command center fell silent. They faced an impossible choice: allow Earth to be destroyed or save themselves by becoming the very monsters the galaxy feared. Prove the Concordant right by using overwhelming force or die proving them wrong. General Marcus Webb spoke up, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "There has to be another way. The Crucible is teaching us, testing us. It would not give us a choice where every option is wrong. There must be something we are not seeing." Chen closed her eyes, diving deep into her connection with the Crucible. She felt the ancient device's intelligence, vast and patient and utterly alien. It was testing them, but Webb was right. The progenitors had not designed a test that could not be passed. There was always an answer, if they were clever enough to find it. Then she understood. The answer was not in the Crucible's capabilities. It was in humanity's nature. "Broadcast everything," Chen said suddenly. "Every sensor reading, every view, every piece of data. Show the galaxy exactly what is happening. Show them that the Zafrani are about to commit genocide with a forbidden weapon. Make it impossible for anyone to claim they did not know." President Santos saw the brilliance of it immediately. "They can destroy us, but they cannot do it in secret. They will have to own their choice in front of the entire galaxy." Within seconds, every human installation began broadcasting. Not just military channels, but civilian ones too. Social media, news networks, entertainment channels, everything. Billions of humans shared the images of the planet-killer weapon charging. The massive device preparing to end their world. The broadcast reached across the galaxy, carried through both human communication systems and the progenitor network that the Crucible had activated. Species across thousands of worlds suddenly found themselves watching in real time as Earth faced destruction. They saw human cities, human families, human children, looking up at stars that contained their doom. Commander Sharonal of the Verdani received the broadcast and made an immediate decision. "This ends now. Verdani fleet, position yourselves between Earth and the Zafrani weapon. If Kethras wants to destroy Earth, he will have to destroy us first." Her 50 ships moved into position, placing themselves directly in the planet killer's firing path. It was a purely symbolic gesture. The weapon would destroy them just as easily as it would destroy Earth. But symbols mattered. Other commanders watched. Other species saw, and many of them remembered why they had formed civilizations in the first place. Not to dominate or destroy, but to protect and preserve. The Concordant had been built on fear, but fear was a poor foundation for anything lasting. The Krythak Horde commander, Threx, growled low in his throat. His species valued strength above all things, but there was no strength in killing defenseless civilians. "Krythak fleet, stand down. We will not participate in this slaughter." The dominoes began to fall. Species after species withdrew from the Concordant, unwilling to be complicit in genocide. Emperor Kethras watched his alliance disintegrate, rage building in his chest. They were all weak, all cowards. He would do what needed to be done alone. "Fire the weapon," he commanded. General Krathos hesitated. "Emperor, we will be acting alone. Every species in the galaxy will turn against us. I do not care." "Fire!" The planet killer began its firing sequence. Energy gathered, building to levels that would crack a world. The human broadcast showed the weapon charging, the countdown to extinction. People on Earth watched, knowing these might be their last moments. They did not riot or panic. They held each other. They said they loved each other. They faced the end with dignity, and that simple act of grace broke something in Emperor Kethras. He watched humans facing death with courage while he prepared to murder them from the safety of space. He saw parents comforting children, lovers embracing, strangers helping strangers. He saw a species that in their final moments chose love over fear. The Emperor had ruled for 200 years. He had conquered dozens of systems and integrated dozens of species into his empire. He had made hard choices and ruthless decisions. But he had never ordered the extinction of an entire civilization, had never murdered billions of innocents, and seeing humanity's grace in the face of death, he found he could not start now. "Abort," Kethra said quietly. "Emperor?" General Krathos asked, uncertain if he had heard correctly. "Abort the firing sequence," Kethras roared. "Stand down all weapons. This is over." The planet killer's energy discharge dissipated harmlessly into space. The weapon powered down. On Earth, humanity watched in stunned disbelief as their execution was cancelled at the last possible moment. In the command center, President Santos sat down heavily, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Chen felt the crucible respond, a surge of approval that washed through her neural link like warm sunlight. Humanity had faced extinction and responded not with desperate violence, but with dignified acceptance and trust in their inherent value. They had forced their enemies to see them as people rather than threats. The test had been passed. Emperor Kethras opened a direct communication channel to Earth. His face appeared on screens across the planet, and for the first time he looked old and tired rather than powerful and commanding. "Humans of Earth," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "I came here prepared to contain you by force. I believed you were a threat to galactic order. I was wrong." He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily. "You have shown courage and dignity that shames my empire. You have demonstrated that the progenitors chose well when they selected you for their inheritance. The Concordant is dissolved. The Zephrani Empire will withdraw. What you do with the power you possess is your choice and your responsibility." The Emperor's image faded. The Zephrani fleet began to withdraw, ships turning away and preparing for the jump to faster-than-light travel. They left as they had come, but changed by what they had witnessed. The other Concordant fleets followed. Some left with respect in their hearts, others left with lingering fear. But all of them left abandoning the siege of Sol, acknowledging that humanity had earned the right to possess the Crucible. Commander Sharonal contacted Earth directly. "President Santos, the Verdani people would like to propose an alliance. Not one based on fear or control, but on mutual respect and shared learning. We believe we have much to teach each other." Over the following hours, similar messages arrived from other species. Many who had come to threaten now came to ask for partnership. They wanted to understand the Crucible, to learn from the progenitor inheritance, to be part of whatever came next. In the research station orbiting Earth, Dr. Chen felt the Crucible opening completely. All its secrets, all its capabilities flooding into her consciousness. The ancient device was no longer testing. It was teaching. She saw the full scope of the inheritance, understood the responsibility that came with it, and wept at the beauty and terror of what humanity had been given. The Crucible was not just technology, it was a trust. The progenitors had left behind everything they had learned, everything they had created, everything they had become. They had scattered it across the galaxy in installations that would only activate for a species that demonstrated the right balance of qualities. Humanity was that species. Messy, contradictory, chaotic humanity. They had proven they could fight without losing their compassion. They could face death without losing their dignity. They could gain power without losing their humility. These were the qualities the progenitors had been seeking. The characteristics that would allow a species to guide a galaxy without becoming tyrants. President Santos addressed her planet and the galaxy that was watching. "We did not ask for this responsibility. We did not seek this power, but we will not run from it. The Crucible has chosen humanity, and we will prove worthy of that choice. We offer partnership to any species willing to join us. We offer our knowledge freely to those who wish to learn. We offer our strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we promise to remain humble, to continue learning, to never forget that power without wisdom is tyranny." The response from across the galaxy was overwhelming. Species that had existed for millions of years, that had achieved wonders humanity could barely imagine, now looked to the young race from Earth for guidance. Not because humanity was superior, but because they had something those ancient civilizations had lost: the flexibility to grow, the humility to admit mistakes, the chaos that bred creativity. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after humanity had faced extinction and been granted godhood in the same day. The Crucible remained in orbit, no longer mysterious but understood, no longer just a device but a teacher and partner. It would continue to test humanity, ensuring they remained worthy, but it would also help them grow into their role as stewards of the progenitor inheritance. Dr. Chen stood at the window of the research station, looking out at the stars. So many worlds, so many species, so much potential. The galaxy had been stagnant for eons, ancient empires maintaining the status quo, no one willing to risk change. Humanity's arrival had shattered that stagnation. They had brought chaos, yes, but chaos was how evolution happened. Chaos was how new things were born. General Marcus Webb joined her at the window. The young pilot had become something of a hero after his role in the siege, but he seemed uncomfortable with the attention, more interested in what came next than what had already happened. "What do you think the progenitors would say?" Webb asked. "If they could see us now, see what we are doing with their inheritance?" Chen smiled. "I think they would say we are exactly what they hoped for. Not perfect, but perfectible. Not finished, but evolving. Not strong enough yet, but getting stronger." "That is a lot of responsibility to put on a species that only just figured out space travel," Webb observed. "Yes," Chen agreed. "But maybe that is the point. The progenitors did not want to give their inheritance to a species that had already achieved everything. They wanted to give it to a species still learning, still growing, still capable of surprise. They wanted their legacy in the hands of people who would continue to push boundaries rather than maintain them." President Santos appeared on the observation deck, drawn by the same view that captivated Chen and Webb. She looked tired but satisfied, a leader who had guided her people through the impossible and out the other side. "The Verdani have sent their first diplomatic team," Santos reported. "They want to establish an embassy on Earth. Several other species have made similar requests. We are going to need to build an entire district just for alien ambassadors." "Earth as the center of galactic politics," Webb said with a laugh. "Who would have thought?" "Not the center," Santos corrected. "A partner. One voice among many. That is the key to making this work. We cannot become what we feared in the Concordant. We cannot let power make us arrogant." Chen nodded. "The Crucible will help with that. It is always watching, always testing. If we start to abuse our position, we will lose access to the inheritance. The progenitors designed a self-correcting system. Still," Santos said quietly, "it would be easier if we had a guide, someone who understood what we are supposed to become." "We are the guide now," Chen replied. "That is the burden and the gift. The progenitors left their knowledge but not their instructions. They want us to find our own path, make our own choices. They want us to take what they gave us and create something new with it, something that reflects who we are rather than who they were." The three of them stood in silence, watching as ships from across the galaxy began arriving in the Sol system. Not invaders or conquerors, but partners and students. They came to learn from humanity, to be part of the next chapter of galactic history. The Zafrani Empire, humbled by their failure, retreated into isolation. Emperor Kethras had abdicated, unable to continue ruling after his near atrocity. The Empire would need time to heal, to reconsider their place in the galaxy, to decide what they would become now that their position of dominance had been challenged. But most species chose differently. They chose to engage, to learn, to participate in the transformation that humanity represented. The galaxy was changing, evolving, growing in ways that had not happened for millions of years. And at the center of it all was humanity, the chaos that had disrupted stagnation, the contradiction that had revealed new possibilities. Dr. Chen returned to her work with the Crucible, diving deeper into its secrets each day. She learned about technologies that could heal dying stars, engines that could move planets, medical advances that could extend life indefinitely. She learned about faster-than-light travel that required no ships, communication that transcended distance, energy sources that tapped into the fundamental forces of reality. And with each discovery came a choice. How would humanity use this knowledge? How would they share it? What responsibilities came with each new capability? The Crucible continued to test, continued to teach, ensuring that power was balanced with wisdom. Young pilot Marcus Webb founded the first human-alien cooperative fleet, ships crewed by multiple species working together to explore the galaxy and protect those in need. It was a model for what the future could look like, different peoples with different strengths, combining to create something greater than any could achieve alone. President Santos worked tirelessly to establish the frameworks for galactic governance that would prevent any one species from dominating others. It was difficult work, negotiating with beings whose cultures and values were sometimes incomprehensibly alien. But she persisted, driven by the knowledge that the alternative was a return to empires and subjugation. Years passed. Then decades. Humanity matured into their role, no longer the shocking upstarts but respected partners in galactic civilization. They made mistakes as the Crucible had known they would. But they learned from those mistakes, grew from them, evolved. The progenitor inheritance spread across the galaxy, not hoarded by humanity, but shared with those who proved ready for it. Other species, inspired by humanity's example, began to rediscover their own capacity for growth and change. The galaxy, stagnant for so long, became dynamic again, and the Crucible watched over it all, the ancient device fulfilling the purpose for which it had been created billions of years ago. It had found the species the progenitors had dreamed of, the ones who could carry their legacy forward without being crushed by it. It had found humanity, messy and contradictory and chaotic and perfect for the task. In the research station that had become a temple of learning visited by species from across the galaxy, an aged Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a new generation of students, both human and alien. She had spent her life studying the Crucible, had given everything to understanding and teaching the progenitor inheritance. The gift the progenitors gave us was not technology, she told her students. It was responsibility. They gave us the tools to build a better galaxy, but they left it to us to decide what better means. They gave us power, but they made sure that power could only be kept through wisdom. They gave us their legacy, but they wanted us to make it our own. A young human student raised her hand. Professor Chen, what happens when we have learned everything the Crucible can teach? When there are no more tests to pass? Chen smiled. Then we become the progenitors for the next cycle. We create our own inheritance, our own tests, our own legacy for species that do not yet exist. Evolution never stops. Growth never ends. The progenitors knew that. That is why they chose a species still in the process of becoming, rather than one that thought it was finished. She looked out the window at the stars, at the galaxy that humanity had helped transform. Somewhere out there, the Zephrani Empire was slowly emerging from isolation, ready to rejoin the galactic community with new humility. Somewhere out there, species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to cooperate. Somewhere out there, new civilizations were rising, finding their own paths to the stars. And everywhere, the inheritance of the progenitors continued its work, teaching and testing and guiding, ensuring that power remained balanced with responsibility, that strength remained tempered with compassion, that chaos remained balanced with purpose. Humanity had been terrified when they first encountered the Crucible, unsure what it meant for their future. The galaxy had been terrified when humanity activated it, certain it spelled their doom. But fear had given way to understanding, and understanding had given way to partnership. The progenitors had been right. The power they left behind did not belong to the perfect or the finished or the advanced. It belonged to those still learning, still growing, still capable of surprise. It belonged to those who could hold contradiction without breaking, who could face chaos without losing purpose, who could gain power without losing their souls. It belonged to humanity. And humanity, for all their flaws and failures, had proven worthy of the gift. Not because they were perfect, but because they understood they never would be. Not because they were strong, but because they knew when to show restraint. Not because they were wise, but because they were willing to learn. These simple truths, so obvious yet so easily forgotten by civilizations that had achieved too much too easily, were what made humanity special. The galaxy had been terrified that such power could not belong to humanity. They had been wrong. The power could not belong to anyone else. Dr. Chen closed her lecture, dismissing her students to continue their studies. As they filed out, chattering in a dozen different languages and communication methods, she felt a presence through her neural link. The Crucible, checking in as it did periodically, ensuring its chosen stewards remained on the right path. "We are doing well," she thought to the ancient device. "Are you satisfied with your choice?" The response came, warm and approving, carrying meaning beyond words. "You were always the right choice. You are still becoming. That is what matters. Keep becoming, children of chaos. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep teaching others that evolution never ends." Chen smiled and looked once more at the stars. Somewhere out there, perhaps in another galaxy entirely, another crucible was waiting for another species to find it. Another test was beginning. Another civilization would be chosen or rejected based on their capacity for balanced growth. But here, in this galaxy, the test had been passed. Humanity had taken their first steps into a larger universe, had claimed their inheritance, and had shared it freely rather than hoarding it selfishly. They had faced down fear with dignity, met force with restraint, and answered hatred with understanding. They had proven that power need not corrupt, that chaos need not destroy, that contradiction need not weaken. They had shown the galaxy what the progenitors had always known, that the greatest strength comes not from perfection, but from the endless process of becoming better. The Galactic Empire had been terrified that such power could belong to humanity. They had mobilized, threatened, attacked, and nearly committed genocide to prevent it. But in the end, they had learned what the Crucible had known all along. The power did not just belong to humanity, it belonged to no one else. It had been waiting billions of years specifically for them, for their unique combination of chaos and compassion, logic and emotion, individuality and cooperation. It had been waiting for a species that could carry the torch forward without letting it burn them, or the galaxy around them. And now finally, after eons of waiting, the inheritance had found its proper home. Not in the hands of the ancient and powerful, but in the hands of the young and growing. Not with those who had finished their journey, but with those who had just begun. The story of humanity and the Crucible was not ending. It was just beginning. And the galaxy, watching with hope instead of fear, waited to see what wonders these chaotic, contradictory, impossible humans would create next. In the darkness of space, the Crucible pulsed with ancient light, satisfied at last. Its long wait was over. Its purpose was fulfilled. And the future, uncertain and chaotic and full of infinite possibility, stretched out before humanity like an open road leading to stars yet unnamed. The test was passed. The inheritance was claimed. And humanity, standing at the threshold of their destiny, looked forward with courage and wonder to all that would come next.